Tonight, an intense exchange in Parliament reshaped the narrative as opposition attacks collapsed under coordinated government pushback.
Analysts say the decisive ministerial responses revealed strategic depth while exposing the opposition's reliance on oversimplified narratives.
Breaking tonight, Canada's parliamentary dynamics just shifted dramatically. Pierre Poilievre didn't land a single blow. He got dismantled. Tensions are rising in Ottawa tonight. The Conservative leader attempted to weaponize job losses and food bank statistics against Mark Carney, but instead of political damage, his attacks backfired spectacularly. Mélanie Joly, François-Philippe Champagne, and Grégoire Robertson delivered responses so sharp, so precise, that Poilievre visibly retreated. Everyone believed question period would be another routine attack session. Political analysts expected Carney to defend himself. Opposition strategists assumed isolated attacks would weaken the government's economic narrative. They were all utterly incorrect. Ottawa, House of Commons, December the 1st. Standing at her desk, Industry Minister Mélanie Joly, who now oversees Canada's industrial strategy, prepared to respond to what Poilievre thought would be a devastating attack on Carney's economic record. Her opening line cut through the chamber. Obviously, our thoughts are with the workers affected by the unjustified and unjustifiable tariffs imposed by the White House. Translation: Canada isn't playing defense. We're calling out exactly who's responsible for steelworker layoffs, and it isn't Mark Carney. And what happened next? The minister who mastered geopolitical strategy on the world stage reveals exactly why Poilievre's domestic attacks collapse when confronted with actual governance, while conservative talking points evaporate against ministerial competence. Dear viewers, between the moment Poilievre stood to attack and the moment he sat down deflated, something extraordinary happened in Canadian parliamentary politics. The Conservative leader pushed too hard. Joly said no. And Carney's cabinet, united, prepared, and strategically patient, became the wall that every opposition attack shattered against. This isn't just about one failed question period strategy. This is about the fundamental collapse of soundbite politics when confronted by substance, and the rise of coordinated cabinet defense as the new standard of parliamentary warfare. Let's understand what actually happened in that chamber today. Poilievre entered question period with a prepared narrative. Algoma Steel announced layoffs. Food bank usage increased in Ontario. Housing starts declined. Standard opposition and ammunition. His strategy was transparent. Blame everything on Mark Carney. Add references to carbon pricing. Throw in allegations about offshore accounts and hope something sticks. The fatal mistake. He assumed Carney would be isolated. He assumed ministers would defer. He assumed attacking the Prime Minister meant nobody else would step up. He was catastrophically wrong. When Poilievre rose to attack Carney over Algoma Steel's 1,000 layoffs in Sault Ste. Marie, claiming the Prime Minister bait and switched steelworkers with broken trade promises and carbon tax increases, he expected either Carney's defense or deflection. Instead, Mélanie Joly stood, and the dynamic instantly changed. Joly's response wasn't defensive, it was educational. She acknowledged the workers facing hardship. Then she identified the actual cause: unjustified and unjustifiable tariffs imposed by the White House. Not Canadian policy, American protectionism. Her follow-up devastated Poilievre's framing. My team and I have been in contact with Algoma Steel's leadership team. We absolutely have every confidence in the Algoma workers in Sault Ste. Marie as they're going through this hardship, and we will make sure that we support them as they're developing new products and also accessing new markets. Translation: while you're using steelworkers as political props, we're actually working with them. The pattern was identical to Canada's geopolitical strategy. Acknowledge the challenge, identify external pressure accurately, pivot to sovereign solutions. Joly applied the same framework domestically that she uses internationally. Poilievre tried to blame Carney for American tariffs. Joly reminded everyone watching exactly who imposed those tariffs and exactly which government is helping workers adapt. But that was just the opening round. Unhappy with his steelworker attack failing, Poilievre escalated. He weaponized Ontario food bank statistics, citing a 165% increase since Carney joined government, attempting to link Canadian hunger directly to carbon pricing. This is where the Conservative strategy reveals its fundamental weakness. Take a complex social challenge, strip away all context, blame the government, offer no alternative solutions. Joly didn't retreat. She reframed entirely. The 44 MPs from Quebec are proud to defend this government, And we will defend the interest of Quebecers because in the last election, Quebec has told us very clearly that they wanted us to protect them with regards to what is happening in the States. She then pivoted to energy sovereignty. Given the current geopolitical climate that is ever-changing, given that the States also made decisions with regards to energy, we must be able to be sovereign with our energy. Translation. You want to talk about affordability? Let's talk about why Canada needs energy independence from American volatility. This is strategic messaging at the highest level. Joly took Poilievre's attack and used it to explain exactly why Carney's energy agreements with Alberta matter, why Canadian sovereignty requires domestic energy security, and why responsible governance means protecting Canadians from foreign economic shocks. Poilievre wanted a soundbite. Joly delivered a masterclass in geopolitical economic policy. When Poilievre returned for a third attack, still hammering food affordability and carbon pricing, François-Philippe Champagne rose. And what followed was a very tough parliamentary exchange. Champagne opened with facts. The first thing we did is to make sure that Canadians would have more money in their pocket. We in fact reduced taxes for Canadians, 22 million Canadians. Then came the hammer. But you know what, Mr. Speaker? What's most disturbing for Canadians watching at home at every step, left where we were there for families, where we're there for workers, where we're there for Canadians, they stand in the way. Translation. Every mies. Year we passed to help affordability, you voted against. This is the exposure Poilievre cannot escape. He complains about food costs while voting against tax cuts for 22 million Canadians. He attacks housing affordability while opposing every housing investment. Champagne made the Conservative position unmistakably clear. Complain about problems, block solutions, repeat. The chamber felt the shift. Poilievre's attacks weren't landing, they were boomeranging. Desperate to regain momentum, Poilievre pivoted to housing. He cited declining housing starts, blamed carbon pricing on construction materials, and attempted to link Carney's personal finances to housing policy. It came across as scattered and increasingly defensive. Gregor Robertson, Minister of Housing and Infrastructure, delivered the final blow with surgical precision. If the leader of the opposition and Conservatives actually cared about affordable housing, they would have voted for the budget with $13 billion for affordable housing. They could have voted for $1 billion to fight homelessness and build supportive housing. They could. These Conservatives stalled the first-time homebuyers' GST break since June. His conclusion was pointed. It undercut Conservative credibility on affordable housing. Translation. You block every housing solution, then complain housing is expensive. That's not opposition, that's obstruction. Robertson exposed the entire Conservative housing strategy as performative complaint without policy substance. Every attack Poilievre launched about declining construction, Robertson countered with Conservative votes against construction funding. Here's what today's question period actually demonstrated and why it matters far beyond parliamentary theater. Mark Carney doesn't need to defend himself. His cabinet does it for him, and they do it devastatingly well. Think about that strategic positioning. Poilievre came to attack Carney. Instead, he faced Joly's geopolitical expertise, Champagne's economic credentials, and Robertson's housing knowledge. 3 ministers, 3 policy areas, 3 comprehensive defenses. This is depth. This is the difference between a government with strategy and an opposition with talking points. Joly connected domestic policy to international context. Champagne exposed voting record contradictions. Robertson demolished housing credibility. Each response built on the previous one, creating a coordinated defense that left Poilievre with nowhere to pivot. The pattern mirrors exactly how Canada approaches international negotiations. Multiple experts, coordinated messaging, strategic patience. Whether facing American tariffs or Conservative attacks, the framework remains consistent. Today wasn't about winning a parliamentary exchange. It was about demonstrating governance capacity versus performative opposition. Poilievre's approach reveals the Conservative strategy's fundamental limitation. Take complex challenges, reduce them to sound bites, blame the government, offer no alternatives. It works for viral clips. It collapses under scrutiny. Carney's team demonstrated the opposite approach. Acknowledge challenges, identify root causes accurately, explain policy responses, expose opposition contradictions. It requires substance. It builds credibility. When Joly explained energy sovereignty in response to food bank statistics, she didn't avoid the question. She elevated it. She connected domestic affordability to geopolitical stability, showing Canadians exactly why independent energy matters for protecting against foreign volatility. When Champagne listed conservative votes against affordability measures, he didn't deflect criticism, he documented it. He transformed Poilievre's attack into an opportunity to remind Canadians which party supports affordability and which party blocks it. When Robertson cited $13 billion in affordable housing that conservatives opposed, he didn't argue about housing policy. He exposed the gap between conservative rhetoric and conservative action. This is parliamentary warfare at the strategic level. Not reactive, not defensive, coordinated, factual, devastating. The significance extends far beyond today's question period. Canada is navigating unprecedented geopolitical and economic volatility. American tariffs threaten industries. Global energy markets shift unpredictably. Housing affordability challenges persist. These are complex, interconnected challenges requiring sophisticated governance. Poilievre's approach offers simplification, blame carbon pricing for everything, promise to cut taxes, assert problems will disappear. Carney's approach offers strategy, build energy sovereignty to protect against American volatility, negotiate trade diversification to reduce dependency, invest in housing supply while supporting affordability, connect domestic policy to geopolitical reality. Today's exchanges revealed which approach withstands scrutiny. When ministers can explain policy decisions by connecting domestic challenges to international context, when they can document opposition obstruction with voting records, when they can defend economic strategy with coordinated expertise, that's governance capacity. When opposition attacks rely on stripping context, avoiding complexity, and offering no alternatives, that's political theater. Canadians watching today saw the difference clearly. Perhaps the most striking aspect of today's exchanges wasn't what was said, it was what wasn't necessary. Mark Carney didn't speak. He didn't need to. His industry minister dismantled attacks on economic policy. His industry minister exposed opposition contradictions. His housing minister documented conservative obstruction. That's the sign of strategic depth. When your team can defend your record across multiple policy areas with coordinated expertise, you're not managing politics. You're demonstrating governance. Poilievre came expecting to land hits on an isolated target. Instead, he faced a coordinated cabinet defense that turned every attack into an opportunity to explain policy, document conservative opposition, and demonstrate competence. The contrast couldn't be starker. One leader requires his entire team to defend comprehensive strategy. One leader attacks alone with isolated talking points. Today showed Canadians which approach builds a country and which approach merely makes noise. Look, everything I've shown you tonight comes from public data and official reporting. But the conclusions? Those are mine. You decide what it means. If this breakdown helped you understand today's parliamentary dynamics and what they reveal about Canada's strategic direction, subscribe to Canada Next. We're tracking every move, every strategy, every development as Canada charts its course through unprecedented global volatility.